In Soviet times, the naming of stores was quite simple and without frills. Bread, milk, meat, fish, and the citizens could tell exactly by the name what was missing in a given store.
А вы обратили внимание, что у нас регулярно возникают перебои с теми или иными товарами?
Конечно, я же хожу по магазинам.
А где вы собрали? А, там уже их нет.
In order to buy scarce goods, which were often put on the counter suddenly, as they said, popped up, one had to stand in a really long line.
Свитерок какой-то сверху, вот сейчас, кстати, выбросили в ГУМе, батники.
Places in the line were sold, and the price depended on how close to the head on the line the place was and how scarce the goods were.
Девушка, скажите, что дают-то? Что дают-то, девушка? Вы скажите, что дают-то?
It was also possible to hire a stander who would stand in for you. And that is just one line for one product. Anything worthwhile was in short supply. When scarcity became permanent and growing, the state was forced to ration the distribution of goods. In the USSR, one of the variations of such rationing was the card system, or coupons. A striking example of that would be a card for employees of factories in Novosibirsk in the late 70s, which said, "Invitation to a grocery store to purchase 300 grams of sausage per month for a single worker." Even plastic grocery bags were in short supply. They were not sold in grocery stores either, and many people carried a special net bag with them. And if they did manage to get a plastic bag, it was carefully washed and reused over and over again. Good for environment though. The only thing left for Soviet people in this case was to make jokes on the subject. Here's an example. Don't you have any meat? No, we don't have any fish. They don't have any meat in the next department.
Скажите, пожалуйста, лук будет? Вы не подскажете, лук будет или нет? Скажите, пожалуйста, лук будет или нет? Я вас спрашиваю, лук будет или нет?
Under such conditions of scarcity, the idea of a store with a large assortment simply made no sense. But despite this, the Soviet Union still attempted to artificially introduce something similar to supermarkets. They were called universal stores. The first of them appeared in large cities in the 70s, and of course were followed by tremendous difficulties, which clearly revealed all the inefficiency of the planned state economy. Firstly, there was simply nothing to fill the huge store with to begin. To fill the void, they would stretch out the merchandise and duplicate it. Bars of just two kinds of canned goods could take up almost a quarter of the store's total area.
Ассортимент, конечно, пополнился, вы знаете, стал очень большой. Это же у нас вот больше 1000 наименований.
Secondly, the lack of equipment. There were not enough refrigerators, not enough counters, not enough transport, and etc. Even cash registers were a problem. And up until 90s, salespeople did their calculations using a medieval invention, abacus. And thirdly, department stores looked very little like self-service stores. Imagine in each department there is a separate salesperson, and to buy a bottle of wine, for example, you have to stand in line, tell the salesperson exactly and how much you intend to buy, so that he gives you a special piece of paper. With this piece of paper you go to another queue at the centralized cashier, where you pay for the purchase. After receiving an invoice confirming the payment, you go back to the wine department and stand in the line again to finally pick up your purchase. And accordingly, in the mid and household sections, the whole procedure is repeated again. Soviet people confessed that sometimes it seemed to them that their whole life was just spent standing in those lines. Such a hellishly inconvenient system came from a total distrust of their people. The officials could hardly imagine that poor Soviet people could walk around the store freely, choose what they needed, and not wanting to steal it. And in many ways they were right. Everything produced in USSR was treated as state property, whether it was sausages or television. And state property, as Soviet person understood it, did not have an owner. Not for nothing this communist dogma have been introduced for decades. Actually, the Soviet person would not admit this openly, but everyone was almost secretly proud if he or she managed to steal something from the state.
Я все на свете могу достать, а он вдвое больше.
Трое.
Dear comrades, we are a young channel that needs your support. consider pressing all those mundane buttons. And remember, Grandpa Joseph is watching you.